I had been dating Olivia for 6 months when I decided it was time for her to meet my family. I was nervous but hopeful that she'd fit in well. Olivia was charming, intelligent, and beautiful, but there was always a lingering doubt in my mind about how she would react to the less glamorous aspects of my life. My father, Harold, owned a successful chain of restaurants, but he had a unique way of testing people's true character. He often disguised himself as a janitor to see how people treated those they perceived as beneath them. Today, he'd be playing that role when we visited his flagship restaurant. "Are you sure they'll like me?" Olivia asked, smoothing down her dress as we approached the entrance. "Of course they will. Just be yourself," I reassured her, that I was more concerned about whether she would like them. As we walked in, Olivia clung to my arm, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Lucas, this place is beautiful," she exclaimed, her gaze sweeping across the elegant decor and the soft lighting that gave the restaurant a warm, inviting glow. "I'm glad you think so," I replied, smiling. "My dad takes a lot of pride in this place." As we entered the restaurant, I spotted my father in his janitor disguise, mopping the floor near the entrance. His gray hair was tucked under a worn cap, and his usual confident demeanor was replaced with the humble posture of a man doing a menial job. Olivia wrinkled her nose slightly but maintained her composure. "Hey, Dad," I greeted warmly, hoping to set a positive tone. "This is Olivia." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. "Your dad works as a janitor here." I nodded, bracing for her reaction. "He likes to stay humble and see things from a different perspective." Olivia forced a smile, but I could see a flicker of disdain in her eyes. "Oh, I see. That's interesting." "Nice to meet you, Olivia," Harold said, extending a hand. "I hope you enjoy your time here." "Thank you," Olivia replied, shaking his hand briefly before turning to me. "Shall we sit?" "Sure," I said, leading her to a table near the window. As we settled in, I could feel a tension in the air. I hoped the rest of the evening would go smoothly, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. "So Lucas," Olivia began, trying to sound casual, "do you often visit your dad here?" "Yes, quite often," I said, nodding. "It's a great place to unwind, and I love the food." "Oh, I can't wait to try it," she said, her enthusiasm seeming a bit forced. "Do you always get this view?" she asked, glancing towards Harold, who was now wiping down a nearby table. I sighed inwardly, hoping she would focus more on the experience than on my father's role. "It's all part of the charm," I said lightly. "Everyone here plays a part in making this place special." Olivia didn't respond, her eyes still fixed on Harold. I could tell she was struggling to reconcile the elegant surroundings with the man she had just met. I decided to change the subject, hoping to steer the evening back on course. "Olivia, have you ever worked in a restaurant?" I asked, trying to draw her attention away from my father. "Oh no, never," she said quickly. "I've always been more into, corporate stuff, office jobs and all that." "I see," I said, nodding. "Well, there's a certain satisfaction in working with your hands and seeing the immediate results of your labor." "I suppose," she replied, sounding unconvinced. As the evening progressed, I watched Olivia closely, hoping to see her warm up to the place and my family. But the initial flicker of disdain in her eyes never quite disappeared. My father continued his work, oblivious to the judgmental glances Olivia occasionally shot his way. I could only hope that her true nature wouldn't reveal itself in a way that would ruin the night. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an evening that would change everything. After a few minutes of awkward small talk, Safi, my sister, arrived at our table with a radiant smile. She was dressed elegantly, her warm demeanor immediately lightening the atmosphere. "Hey, big brother," she greeted, giving me a quick hug before turning to Olivia. "You must be Olivia. I've heard so much about you." Olivia's smile was polite but a little strained. "Yes, it's nice to meet you, Sophie." Sophie sat down with us, her cheerful energy contrasting with Olivia's composed demeanor. "So, Olivia, what do you do for work?" "I'm an executive assistant at a marketing firm," Olivia replied, her tone professional. "It's demanding, but I love the challenge." "That sounds exciting," Sophie said genuinely. "I've always admired people who thrive in such fast-paced environments. I'm more into the creative side of things myself." Olivia's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Creative? What do you do?" "I'm a graphic designer," Sophie said with a proud smile. "I work on everything from branding to web design." "Interesting," Olivia said, though I could sense a hint of disinterest in her voice. Just then, my father approached our table again, this time to clear away some empty glasses. He gave us a friendly nod. "How's everything so far?" "Great, thanks," I replied, smiling up at him. Olivia, however, didn't acknowledge him, her attention focused elsewhere. As my father walked away, Safi leaned in slightly, her voice lowered. "Isn't it amazing how Dad still finds time to be involved in every aspect of the business?" Olivia gave a tight smile. "Yes, quite dedicated." "So, Olivia," Sophie continued, trying to keep the conversation flowing, "what do you like to do in your free time?" Olivia seemed to brighten at this. "I enjoy shopping, traveling, and going to high-end restaurants. I love experiencing new places and things." "That sounds lovely," Sophie said. "I enjoy traveling too, though I prefer more off-the-beaten-path destinations. Have you traveled anywhere interesting recently?" "I went to Paris last month," Olivia said, her eyes lighting up. "It was fabulous. The fashion, the food, the culture, everything was perfect." "I've always wanted to go to Paris," Sophie said dreamily. "Maybe one day." As we continued talking, I noticed Olivia's eyes wandering around the restaurant. When she spotted my father again, now mopping a spill near another table, she couldn't hide her irritation any longer. "Lucas, can't your dad take a break? It's a bit distracting having him mop the floor while we're trying to enjoy our meal," she said, her voice low but sharp. Sophie's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Dad likes to stay busy. He says it keeps him grounded." Olivia forced a smile. "I guess I'm just not used to it." I decided to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Olivia, do you have any favorite restaurants in the city?" "Oh, absolutely," she said, her tone brightening again. "There's this new place downtown that's just incredible. The chef is world-renowned and the decor is to die for." "Sounds fancy," Sophie said with a grin. "I'll have to check it out." As the evening wore on, I could see the stark differences between Olivia and my family becoming more apparent. While Sophie and I shared stories about our childhood and laughed over old memories, Olivia seemed increasingly detached, her interest waning. At one point, Sophie excused herself to use the restroom, leaving Olivia and me alone. I took the opportunity to address the tension. "Olivia, are you okay? You seem a bit distracted." She sighed, glancing around the restaurant. "I'm just not used to this kind of place. It's different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" I asked gently, hoping to understand her better. "I don't know," she admitted. "Something more polished. I didn't think I'd be dining with a janitor nearby." I felt a pang of disappointment but tried to remain calm. "Olivia, my dad works hard to keep this place running smoothly. He believes in leading by example." "I understand that," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "It's just not what I'm accustomed to." Before I could respond, Sophie returned, and the conversation shifted back to lighter topics. But the unease lingered, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this night was revealing more about Olivia than I had anticipated. The evening progressed with a mix of pleasant conversation and underlying tension. As dessert was served, Sophie shared an amusing story about our family's trip to the countryside when we were kids, bringing a nostalgic smile to my face. "And then Lucas fell into the pond while trying to catch a frog." Sophie laughed, her eyes sparkling. "We had to drive back home with him soaking wet and covered in mud." I chuckled, glancing at Olivia to see if she was enjoying the story. She smiled politely, but her eyes flickered with impatience. "I think it's time for a toast," I suggested, lifting my glass. "To family, friends, and new beginnings." Everyone raised their glasses, clinking them together. Olivia's smile seemed forced, but she joined in nonetheless. Just as we were about to take a sip, I heard a commotion nearby. My father, still in his janitor disguise, was mopping the floor near our table when someone accidentally bumped into him, causing the mop to slip from his hands and splash water onto Olivia's dress. "Oh my God," Olivia exclaimed, jumping up from her seat. "Look what you've done." My father immediately apologized, bending down to pick up the mop. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It was an accident." Olivia's face flushed with anger. "An accident? You've ruined my dress. Do you have any idea how expensive this is?" "Olivia, it's okay," I tried to soothe her. "It's just a little water." "It's not okay, Lucas," she snapped. "This dress is ruined, and it's all because of him." Sophie stood up, trying to intervene. "Olivia, please, it was an honest mistake. Dad didn't mean to." "Stay out of this, Sophie," Olivia cut her off. "I can't believe you've let your father behave like this in front of guests. It's humiliating." My father's face fell, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. I'm really sorry. Let me get you something to help clean it up. Olivia glared at him. Just stay away from me. Sophie stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. Olivia, you need to calm down. Dad's just trying to help. I don't need help from a janitor, Olivia spat, turning her ire towards Sophie. And you, why are you even here? Do you think you're better than me just because you're his daughter? Sophie's eyes widened in shock. Olivia, that's not fair. I'm just trying to what? Show off? Pretend like you're some perfect little princess. Olivia grabbed her glass of water and before anyone could react, threw it in Sophie's face. Sophie, I exclaimed, rushing to my sister's side. She stood there, drenched and stunned, tears welling up in her eyes. My father stepped forward, his voice firm. That's enough, Olivia. You need to leave. Olivia turned to him, her face contorted with rage. You can't tell me what to do, old man. You're just a janitor. That's where you're wrong, came a voice from behind us. We all turned to see Marco, the restaurant manager, walking over with a stern expression. Mr. Harold is not just a janitor. He's the owner of this restaurant. The room fell silent as the weight of Marco's words sank in. Olivia's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. What? She stammered. You're the owner? My father nodded, standing tall. Yes, Olivia, I am. And I've seen enough to know that you don't belong here. I turned to Olivia, my heart heavy with disappointment. Olivia, I think you should go. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Lucas, please, I didn't know. It doesn't matter, I interrupted, my voice firm. What matters is how you treated my family. With one last glare at my father and Sophie, Olivia grabbed her purse and stormed out of the restaurant. I turned to Sophie, who was still shaken, and hugged her tightly. I'm so sorry, Sophie, I whispered. I had no idea she would react like that. Sophie hugged me back, her voice trembling. It's not your fault, Lucas. My father placed a comforting hand on Sophie's shoulder. Let's get you cleaned up, sweetheart. As we walked towards the back of the restaurant, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and sadness. Olivia's true colors had been revealed, and it was clear that she wasn't the person I thought she was. But in that moment, surrounded by my family, I realized that I had made the right choice. Family always came first. The aftermath of the incident with Olivia left a heavy silence hanging over the restaurant. As my family and I gathered in the back office to help Sophie dry off, the reality of what had just transpired began to sink in. Sophie dabbed at her face with a towel, her eyes red from the tears she had been holding back. I can't believe she did that, she whispered. I thought she was different. My father shook his head, his expression one of both disappointment and relief. It's better that we know now, rather than later. I nodded, still reeling from the revelation. I'm sorry, Sophie. I should have seen the signs. Sophie gave me a small, sad smile. It's not your fault, Lucas. People can be good at hiding their true selves. Just then, Marco knocked on the door and stepped inside, his face a mask of concern. How are you all holding up? We're managing, Marco, my father said. Thank you for stepping in earlier. Marco nodded, glancing at Sophie with sympathy. No one deserves to be treated like that, especially not family. My father sighed, running a hand through his hair. I think it's time we had a conversation with the staff and let them in on the truth. I looked at him surprised. Are you sure, Dad? You've always kept your identity a secret to understand the business from the ground up. He nodded, a determined look in his eyes. It's time. Today showed us the importance of honesty and transparency. With that decision made, we all made our way back to the main dining area. The restaurant was quieter now, with only a few diners remaining. My father called a staff meeting, and soon all the employees were gathered around us, their faces curious and concerned. My father cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming. There's something I need to share with you. He took a deep breath before continuing. I'm not just the janitor here. I'm Harold, the owner of this restaurant. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Some of the staff exchanged bewildered looks, while others nodded as if things were finally clicking into place. Marco stepped forward, his voice steady. It's true. Mr. Harold has been working undercover to understand every aspect of the business and to see how things really operate on the ground. One of the waitresses, Maria, spoke up, her eyes wide. So all this time you've been watching us? Testing us? My father nodded. In a way, yes, but it wasn't just about testing. It was about understanding the heart of this place, the people who make it what it is. Another waiter, James, frowned. Why keep it a secret? My father's expression softened. I wanted to see how everyone behaved without the pressure of knowing the owner was watching. To understand the real dynamics and challenges you face. The staff seemed to take this in, their expressions slowly shifting from confusion to understanding. I know it's a lot to take in, my father continued, but today something happened that made me realize the importance of honesty and transparency. And I want you all to know that I appreciate the hard work you put in every day. Sophie, who had been standing quietly by my side, stepped forward. And I want to apologize for what happened earlier. Olivia's behavior was unacceptable, and I'm so sorry you had to witness that. The staff murmured their support, and Maria stepped forward with a warm smile. We're just glad to know the truth, Sophie. We're a family here, and families support each other. My father smiled, a weight seemingly lifted from his shoulders. Thank you, Maria. And thank you all for your understanding. Let's move forward from this stronger and more united than ever. As the meeting concluded, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The truth was out, and despite the chaos, it felt like a new beginning. I turned to Sophie and my father, grateful for their support. We'll get through this together, I said, my voice filled with determination. Sophie nodded, a spark of hope in her eyes. We will, Lucas. We always do. My father placed a hand on my shoulder, his gaze steady. And remember, son, it's not about the wealth or the status. It's about the people we surround ourselves with and the values we hold dear. I nodded, understanding the lesson he was imparting. The experience had been painful, but it had also been enlightening. And as we stood there, united as a family, I knew that we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The days following the incident were a whirlwind of emotions and realizations. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened, trying to piece together the puzzle of Olivia's true nature. Despite the hurt and betrayal, I knew it was crucial to face the truth head-on. It was a quiet evening at the restaurant when I decided to have a heart-to-heart with Marco. He had always been a pillar of strength and wisdom, and I knew he would have some valuable insights. We sat at a corner table, away from the hustle and bustle, the dim lighting casting a serene glow around us. Marco, I began, my voice heavy with uncertainty. I still can't wrap my head around everything that happened. How could I have been so blind to Olivia's true nature? Marco looked at me with a mix of empathy and understanding. Lucas, love can sometimes cloud our judgment. We see what we want to see, and it's not until something drastic happens that the veil is lifted. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I guess you're right. I just feel so foolish. Marco placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Don't be too hard on yourself. What's important is that you've learned from this. And remember, it's not just about recognizing someone else's faults, but also about understanding your own values and what you truly want in a partner. I nodded, appreciating his wisdom. Thanks, Marco. Your perspective always helps. Just as we were about to continue our conversation, I noticed Olivia walking into the restaurant. She spotted me and made her way over, her expression a mix of defiance and desperation. My heart sank, knowing that this confrontation was inevitable. Lucas, we need to talk, Olivia said, her voice strained. I took a deep breath, standing up to face her. All right, Olivia, let's talk. We moved to a quieter corner, away from prying eyes and ears. Olivia's gaze darted around nervously before she spoke. I know things got out of hand the other day, she began, her tone defensive. But I was just trying to impress you and your family. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I crossed my arms, my expression stern. Impressed us by throwing a drink on my sister and belittling my father. That's not the way to win anyone over, Olivia. She huffed, her frustration evident. I didn't know he was your father. I thought he was just a janitor. And Sophie, well, she was being so difficult. I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. You still don't get it, do you? It's not about their titles or roles. It's about respect and kindness. How you treat people when you think no one is watching speaks volumes about your character. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. So what? You're just going to throw everything away because of one mistake? I sighed, feeling a mix of sadness and resolution. It's not just one mistake, Olivia. It's a pattern of behavior. Your true colors came out, and they're not something I can ignore. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a pleading whisper. Lucas, please, I love you. We can work through this. I looked into her eyes, searching for any genuine remorse, but all I saw was desperation. I thought I loved you too, Olivia. But love isn't just about words. It's about actions and values. And what I saw the other day, it's not something I can overlook. A tear slipped down her cheek, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But I knew I had to stand firm. I think it's best if we go our separate ways, I said gently. We're just not right for each other. Olivia stared at me, a mix of shock and hurt flashing across her face. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me with a heavy heart but a clear mind. As I returned to the table where Marco was waiting, he gave me a supportive nod. You did the right thing, Lucas. I sighed, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. It wasn't easy, but I know it was the right choice. Marco smiled, his eyes filled with pride. Remember, Lucas, sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead us to the right path. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settling over me. The truth had been unveiled, and though it was painful, it was also liberating. I had learned a valuable lesson about love, trust, and the importance of staying true to my values. And with my family and friends by my side, I knew I had the strength to move forward, ready to face whatever came next. The breakup with Olivia left me with a mixture of emotions: sadness, relief, and a renewed sense of clarity. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on the relationships and values that truly mattered to me. It was a time of introspection and growth, and I began to understand the importance of authenticity and integrity in the people I chose to have in my life. One evening, I decided to have dinner with Sophie and Harold at the family restaurant. It was a chance to reconnect and to apologize for the turmoil my relationship with Olivia had caused. We sat at our usual table near the back, the soft glow of the restaurant's lights casting a warm ambience around us. Sophie, Dad, I began, my voice sincere. I want to apologize for everything that happened with Olivia. I should have seen the signs earlier and protected you both from her behavior. Harold smiled gently, his eyes filled with understanding. Lucas, you don't need to apologize. We all make mistakes, and what's important is that you've learned from it. Sophie nodded in agreement. Yeah, Lucas, we were worried about you, but we're glad you saw her true colors. It's a tough lesson, but it's one that will make you stronger. I sighed, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Thanks, both of you. It means a lot to have your support. Harold leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, Lucas, this experience has reminded me of something important. It's not about what someone does or what they have. It's about who they are. Character is revealed in the way they treat others, especially those who can't do anything for them in return. I nodded, absorbing his words. You're right, Dad. I realize now that I was so focused on the idea of love and the image of a perfect relationship that I ignored the red flags. Olivia's behavior was a wake-up call. Sophie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We all want to believe the best in the people we care about, but sometimes we need to take a step back and see things for what they really are. I smiled at her, grateful for her wisdom. Thanks, Sophie. You've always been the voice of reason. We continued our dinner, the conversation flowing easily as we shared stories and laughter. It felt good to be surrounded by the people who knew me best, who had my back no matter what. Later that evening, as I was cleaning up the restaurant with Marco, he brought up an interesting point. You know, Lucas, this whole ordeal with Olivia got me thinking. Sometimes we need to go through difficult situations to truly appreciate the good things in life. I looked at him, curious. What do you mean? Marco set down a stack of plates and leaned against the counter. Well, take this restaurant, for example. It's not just a place to eat. It's a place where memories are made, where people come together. It's about the community and the connections we build. The same goes for relationships. They should enrich our lives, not complicate them. I nodded, understanding the depth of his words. You're right, Marco. I've been so focused on finding the perfect partner that I forgot what really matters: genuine connection and mutual respect. Marco smiled, his eyes twinkling. Exactly. And now that you've realized that, you're in a better place to find someone who truly aligns with your values. As I finished wiping down the tables, I felt a sense of peace and clarity. The realizations I had come to over the past few weeks were profound, and I knew they would guide me in making better choices in the future. Just as we were about to close up for the night, the door opened, and in walked an unexpected visitor. It was Emma, an old friend from college whom I hadn't seen in years. She looked around, a smile spreading across her face when she saw me. "Lucas, it's been ages," she exclaimed, coming over to give me a hug. "Emma, wow, this is a surprise. How have you been?" I asked, genuinely delighted to see her. "I've been good, just moved back to town. Thought I'd drop by and see if you were still working here," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Marco, sensing an opportunity, discreetly slipped away to give us some privacy. I couldn't help but feel a flutter of hope. Perhaps this was the universe's way of showing me that new beginnings were on the horizon. As Emma and I caught up, sharing stories and laughter, I realized that life had a way of bringing people back into your path at just the right moment. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something beautiful. The evening ended on a hopeful note, and as I walked Emma to her car, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the journey I had been on. The lessons learned, the realizations made, and the support of my family and friends had all led me to this point. And with a renewed sense of purpose, I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. The decision to end things with Olivia was not an easy one. Despite everything, there were moments when we had shared genuine happiness, and those memories lingered in the back of my mind. But the events of the past few days had made it abundantly clear that our relationship was built on shaky foundations. I invited Olivia to the same restaurant where it all began. There was a certain symmetry to it, a way of bringing things full circle. She arrived, looking as glamorous as ever, but I could see a hint of worry in her eyes. She knew something was up. "Lucas, what's going on? You sounded so serious on the phone," Olivia said, taking her seat across from me. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Olivia, we need to talk. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize that our relationship isn't what I thought it was." She frowned, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously on the table. "What do you mean?" "We've had our ups and downs, but that's normal in any relationship." I shook my head, feeling a pang of sadness. "It's more than that. The way you treated my father and Sophie, the things you said to them. It showed me a side of you that I can't ignore." Olivia's expression hardened. "Lucas, they were pretending to be something they're not. How was I supposed to know who they really were?" "That's exactly the point," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "You judged them based on their appearances and treated them horribly because of it. You showed no respect, no empathy. And when you thought Marco was the owner, you immediately tried to impress him. It made me realize that your values and mine are completely different." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "So you're breaking up with me because I didn't pass some kind of test?" "This is ridiculous, Lucas." I sighed, feeling the weight of my decision. "It's not just a test, Olivia. It's about who you are as a person. I need to be with someone who values people for who they are, not for what they have. I thought you were that person, but I was wrong." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll never find someone who cares about you as much as I do." I shook my head, standing up from the table. "Maybe, but I'd rather be alone than with someone who only cares about appearances and wealth. I wish you all the best, Olivia, but this is goodbye." As I walked out of the restaurant, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Relief, sadness, and a sense of liberation. It was a painful decision, but it was the right one. Back at the restaurant, Harold and Sophie were waiting for me. They had been my pillars of strength throughout this ordeal, and I knew they would support me now. "How did it go?" Sophie asked, her eyes filled with concern. I managed a small smile. "It's over." I told her the truth, and it wasn't easy, but it needed to be done. Harold nodded, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Lucas. It takes courage to stand up for your values and to end something that isn't right for you." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure. "Thanks, Dad. And thank you, Sophie. I couldn't have gotten through this without you both." Sophie smiled, her eyes bright with pride. "We're a family, Lucas. We stick together, no matter what." As we sat down to a quiet dinner, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The journey had been difficult, but it had taught me invaluable lessons about love, integrity, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly cared about me. Later that night, I received a message from Emma. She had heard about the breakup and wanted to check in on me. Her kindness and genuine concern were a stark contrast to the superficiality I had experienced with Olivia. "Hey, Lucas. Just wanted to see how you're doing. If you need to talk, I'm here." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Thanks, Emma. I appreciate it. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime." "Absolutely. Just let me know when," she replied. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for a long time. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a while, I was excited to see where it would lead. Surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, I knew I was on the right path, and whatever came next, I was ready to face it with an open heart and a clear mind.